Good afternoon, everybody. I have Sandy on today, and Sandy, welcome to Canadians with Disabilities and their Allies.
Well, thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you on. Definitely, we're going to be talking about the upcoming election in Ontario on June the 2nd and the ratifications for all those on ODSP. Definitely a pressing issue, and it's a delight having you on to the show today to talk about these pressing issues and the ongoing saga of the ultra-low ODSP rates that are just definitely not enough to live on. They weren't decades ago, and they definitely aren't now.
That's for sure.
Well, thanks, and I'm going to hand the mic over to you, and the mic is all yours.
Okay, so on June 2nd, it's Ontario's provincial election, and this is one of the rare times the rates of disability have actually been mentioned, because normally we're forgotten altogether. There's been pressures put on the different parties to actually say what's going to be on the platform. The Conservatives have said, okay, they'll raise it 5%, a whole 5%, which doesn't even really make up for the fact that they haven't been raising our rates. Then the Liberals, well, first the NDP came out and said that they would raise it 20%. Now, for those of you who don't know, that only brings it up to just over $1,400, because currently the maximum amount somebody can get in Ontario is $1,169. The average rent in my area for a one-bedroom apartment at market rate is about $1,400. So it's easy to see how the math doesn't add up if you want to pay rent and actually eat food. The Liberals felt pressured to at least match the NDP. And then the Greens also came out and said that they're going to double it should they get in, which is very nice for them to say, but we all know there's no chance of them winning. But with enough pressure, the NDP did eventually fold. And so they said, okay, we'll start with 20% right off the bat. And then in maybe about 2 years after studies or more thought, or I don't know really why it's needed to, but they'll say after a couple of years, they'll double it. That is definitely a promise that should they get in power, that I'm going to make sure that they stand by, because a lot of people who survive on disability know that 2 years is a long time. A lot can happen in that time. Some people, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but they're not even going to make it that long with the conditions that we're currently living in. Because the other thing the current Conservative government did was get rid of certain rent regulations. If you're kicked out on the street and you have to try to find a new place at market rent, it's impossible to find anything that your entire disability check will cover. So that means you're in the shelters or left on the streets. And those are hard enough to survive if you don't have a disability. It's been, like I'm sure it is across the country, it's been rough. During COVID, we were given 3 months with an extra $100 on our checks if you knew enough to ask your worker, and if your worker would be willing to actually put it on your disability check. Even though, as many of us know, all of our expenses also went up during the pandemic, and it was such a kick in the teeth when Justin Trudeau got up and proclaimed, $2,000 is the bare minimum anyone needs to survive. And meanwhile, everyone on disability is like, a little help here? Yeah, this is something that has been frustrating me so long. The way the political parties speak about people with disabilities, what they say we should do. It's like, we'll do jobs training programs. We'll do work with companies to see that they hire more people with disabilities and this and that and the other thing. And a lot of people who live with disabilities are capable of doing some jobs. Some of those jobs may be like knitting cloths or volunteering at community centers or something very basic, something that wouldn't even come close to paying a living wage, let alone covering the extra expenses anyone with a disability has to deal with. And this whole idea that the government has painted around that people on disability, they just need to work harder. They just need to get their act together and they can get a job, when that is not the case. We're not on disability because we don't want to work. It's because we can't. I myself am on disability. I have mental health issues, and these issues prevent me from being very social in enforced social situations. So if I'm forced to go into a job around people that I don't necessarily know or like, it's not going to end well for anyone involved. Plus, I have anxiety, I have severe mood swings. Sometimes I need to be left alone to cope and deal with what's happening in my head. It's very unpredictable. I have chronic depression. And if any employer found out about this, they're not going to hire you. Like, as much as there's supposed to be all these human rights, equality at the workplace, we'll hire people with disabilities, we all know that's not true, because most of us have probably, who can work, have been in situations where we've tried to get a job, but they're unwilling to accommodate our disability, or they're scared of it. I'm hoping that the NDP gets in. The polls aren't looking good right now, but first past the post is crazy, so who knows what will happen on election day. Because I'm tired, like everyone else is tired, of simply just trying to survive month to month, being unsure of how you're going to pay for rent, being unsure if suddenly your disability will be pulled out from under you. Because the other horrifying thing people in Ontario now have to worry about is, if Doug Ford gets back in power, he plans on privatizing the rollout of these social services, which means ODSP will be done by a private company. And that means for them to make more money means kicking more people off, or not accepting as many people who need to be on.
Yeah, and people have, their own lived experience, right? They know what is best, like, based on their capabilities of what they go through on a day-to-day basis, Sandy. And you're absolutely correct on that. And with Doug Ford coming out always saying, well, the best thing is just to, get these folks a job, right? Well, he's speaking on behalf of disabled people, what he figures is best for them. Well, like I say, people with disabilities, they go through like you and many of us, what we all go through on a day-to-day basis. So we know what we go through, and give people enough money beyond just the basic, right, of the threshold, so that they can survive and have a roof over their head. They buy the food that they need, that is best on for their own personal diet, medications, accessibility equipment, you name it, right? All the above. And privatization is not the way to go. I think it's just a political stunt, personally. I think it's just a PR thing that he wants to do, is for recognition. It's not going to work.
I hope not, but his plans on privatizing a lot of our health care, like, if his supporters knew what he is going to try to do should he get back in power, even they would vote against him, because everyone appreciates the health care we get. Many of us know it doesn't cover everything, it's not universal, but for the average person out there who doesn't have much in the way of medical needs, they think our healthcare system is perfect. And if they knew that was threatened in any way, they would actually care. But so many people just do not pay attention to elections in this country, across the country, whether it be on the municipal level all the way up to the federal level. Like, the amount of engagement in politics is so low, which is like, you just want to try to shake people and make them understand. Politics is everything around us. It's the laws, it's the healthcare, it's what kind of supports you get. It's everything that helps make your life what it is. Like, you bring to your life what you're capable of bringing, and then the rest of it should be done by the government to make sure that you're living the best quality of life you can with what you have. It's just so frustrating to me, because people with disabilities still have lots to offer the communities around them. And the reality is too, and this is the thing, like, I hate this idea of we have to be the good ones. Like, we're the good person on disability. We can contribute. I can volunteer. I can do this. I can show off and do that. But if somebody who is on disability feels the best thing for them is to stay at home and stay out of the community, then that's their decision to make.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we shouldn't all have to be these shining examples of like success and achievement, even though despite our disability, because some people struggle with it. Some people don't manage with it well. Like, for some people, it's a new disability and it takes time for them to adjust.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, anyone can develop a disability at any point in time in their life. I mean, they're born with it, or they can get it. Doesn't matter which age. Disability doesn't discriminate against age. It'll get you either way. And 1 in 5 stats show that people will have a form of a disability in their life at some point in time, either visible or physical or both or all the above, right? And yeah, there's a standard. If you don't have your health, then things diminish down, and that comes down with an income equality, which definitely it keeps people above, so that it actually benefits them, their well-being, right? It's social equality, and policies are what's driving things in a negative way, and those policies can easily be changed. It's just political will.
Yeah, like you said earlier, disabilities can happen to anyone at any time. And there's a story that I just keep on remembering during the pandemic that I can't get over how horrible and horrendous it is. Was that when the pandemic started, the privatized long-term care homes in Ontario were dealing with it so poorly, the military had to be called in to get things under control. When they showed up, they found 26 people had died of dehydration. As they walked in the door, 26 people dead from dehydration. And those people are the ones with disabilities, the ones that weren't able to get out of the bed on their own to just go get a drink of water. They were trapped on their beds, and there wasn't enough staff there to help them with the most basic of needs. And that's horrific. It's horrific that was allowed to happen, and that the government that allowed this to happen then rewarded these long-term care homes by giving hundreds of millions to the shareholders. And nothing has fundamentally changed. In fact, Doug Ford passed a law so that you can't sue these homes for damages occurred during the pandemic.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
So, yeah, because I can't, like, when my grandmother was in a nursing home, she was wheelchair bound. They had to use this crane to get her in and out of the bed and stuff. She could have been one of those people had she still been alive. She couldn't get out of bed on her own. And the thought of these seniors, these vulnerable seniors, lying in these beds, dying of thirst, like, it's just, you can't imagine something like that happening in a country like Canada, and yet it is. And it gets almost no acknowledgement. There's no consequences. There's no accountability. People should be going to jail for this.
Yeah, all the cutbacks unnecessary cutbacks that are happening in long-term care homes, and the ones that are working are just running their feet off and trying to accommodate all the growing needs that as population ages, and deliberate cutbacks just to save the bottom dollar to make the government look better to its stakeholders, right? And people's health and their safety, everything above. It all suffers, and there's no need for it.
Yeah. I don't understand how people can't think of their own futures. Because most people at some point in their life will have to confront whether or not they need to go into a long-term care home. And the fact that people can't even see that right now and vote for that now, it's like what I tell people who are interested in getting involved in activism. I say to them, don't wait for it to be your problem. Once it's your problem, it's too late generally for you to be able to do much about it.